everyone, welcome to video 2 of the series Don't Be Fooled by Fools. On my previous video, I talked about basic research that uses cells or animals as models. I also talked about examples seen in the clinic, which are described by physicians and clinicians based on what they see happening to human beings. All of these steps are necessary and play a fundamental role for our understanding of how diseases may happen and how to best treat them. It is through the experiments performed using cells or animals that we start unraveling and putting together the pieces that allow us to understand how diseases work to then develop possible treatments. But the question still remains: can the results obtained from basic research be observed in real life with real people? That's where the top of the pyramid comes into play. We're able to assess if our understanding is correct through the randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trials, aka the gold standard in intervention-based research, which aims to test the effectiveness and safety of one or more treatments. To understand what they are, let's start by breaking down the name. First things first, what are clinical trials? Clinical trials are experiments with human beings to test the efficacy of a treatment under real conditions. And the treatment here could be a new drug, a different kind of surgery or exercise regimen, a new technology, and so on. Basically, researchers gather a whole bunch of people to do this and measure a lot of different parameters to arrive at a conclusion on whether the treatment has a positive or negative outcome, or if any changes are seen at all. So it's important to understand that clinical trials are still experiments. Obviously, everything is done under the highest ethical guidelines to ensure the trial is safe to participants, keeping in mind their well-being, but they are still experimental in nature. Now, what is randomized? To put it simply, randomization is used to select participants while avoiding any possible bias that could interfere with the experiment. Randomization is based on the fact that each patient has an equal chance of receiving any of the treatments used in the study, including a placebo control. The probability of any individual receiving one intervention or the other is decided solely by chance. And there are specialized programs that can do that for researchers. This way, any difference in the observed outcome between the groups is likely due to the intervention itself, rather than any other factors. And what exactly is placebo-controlled? A placebo is a substance that is not expected to affect or interfere the outcome of the experiment, such as a sugar or a starch pill, or a saline solution in the case of injectable substances. In a placebo-controlled trial, there is one group that gets the active treatment and the other that gets the placebo. Everything else is held the same between the two groups so that any difference in the outcome between the groups can be attributed to the active treatment. The placebo pill or the saline solution physically looks like the drug being tested, and that becomes important for the double blinding of this study. In a double-blind trial, neither the participants nor the researchers know who is getting the active medication and who is getting the placebo. And that's the reason why the pills have to look the same, to minimize the chance of bias in the study. Usually, a monitoring group not involved in the study randomly assigns patients to one group or the other and keeps track of the group assignments during the trial. At the end of the trial, the blind is broken. It is revealed to the researchers who received the active compound and who received the placebo, so that statistical analysis can be carried on and we can finally reach a conclusion about the intervention, whether it is helpful or not. There are also single-blind studies where the participants do not know what they are receiving, if the active drug or the placebo, but the researcher does. And this is also a great way to test interventions. It is important to trial an intervention with a placebo control because of the placebo effect, which is the tendency that we all have to feel better for a while when we think we are receiving a treatment that will help us. The placebo effect can happen when the treatment is actually helping, or when it is doing nothing, or when it is actually harming us. An important part to remember is that experimental drugs are indeed experimental. That means that the drug can have a positive effect, no effect at all, or be harmful. So we need to keep in mind that a patient on a placebo may actually be getting better compared to someone on the active trial medication if that medication isn't helpful. So now you understand why the randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trials are the gold standard in intervention-based medicine, because it gives the scientific and medical communities the best chance of determining whether an active treatment is effective or not, making sure we take into consideration the placebo effect and minimizing biases before reaching a conclusion. And to ensure it is safe, it is done in phases, increasing the number of participants from phase 0 to phase 4, which I'll explain in detail on my next video. Now let's understand systematic reviews. A systematic review collects all possible studies related to a given topic and design and reviews and analyzes their results. During the systematic review process, the quality of the studies is evaluated and a statistical meta-analysis of each study is conducted on the basis of their quality. A meta-analysis is a valid, objective, and scientific method of analyzing and combining different results. So it's research on research. Very neat. And this is important because the researchers are going to gather all the publications related to randomized controlled trials that happened all over the world. And the thing is, these controlled trials will most likely have different methods. For instance, different number of participants, different ethnicity, gender, duration of the trial, and so on, which might confound the results, as different populations react differently. So a meta-analysis will take into account all of these differences so that a statistical analysis can be performed to reach a unifying conclusion, whether a particular intervention is truly effective or not, with a high level of evidence and confidence. So, whenever possible, when you're looking for answers, you start by looking at studies at the top of the pyramid, such as randomized controlled trials and meta-analysis, working your way down if there is no such evidence to be found. On my next video of this series, I will explain in detail the different phases of clinical trials and the importance of them, so you can understand how a particular new intervention is holding up during trials, and even search a medication that you're currently using to see how they did in clinical trials. So like and share this video and subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you later. Bye bye.